Hello buddies, I have a new build for you and this time it's big. The build is like, if I could define it, it will be a new meta, at least if they don't nerf it, but it will define a new meta. A meta where your companion does all the work for you in any content. In Zariel, like in here, in Tom, or any lower content with this simple Puka Puka chicken. So, if you want to know the secret, there's the build. It's a really highly requested build because I showed some screenshots of my damage in Zariel and in Tom, and people were like questioning on how I managed to do that on Fighter Dreadnought. But this build also works for any classes. So if you want to do it, there's already some people that converted to this build. It can be really great, but it has some downside to use a chicken or Zuna, but chicken is better on this build. I will just talk about the chicken because it's single target and most endgame content are single target. It's really high risk, high reward. So like in Tom, if you use a chicken, it has chance to kill the ice. But if you know how to play the chicken, it should not happen. So like me, it happens once every like 5 to 6 runs, something like that. But it depends on how fast your group is, and different groups has different speed to do the run, so that's why it just changes. But in Zariel it works pretty well, except maybe on the 4th phase on the angels. Sometimes the chicken does a little bit too much damage for them to survive, so you just need to watch out about that. But except that, it's really insane build. But it costs a lot. Of course, I will explain. So the first thing that is important on the chicken is item level. You want your item level to be highest as you can. Just as a comparison, now I'm 37k. Before, before the mount changes, I was 29.6. So simply with this item level change, I gained 58% damage on my companion, on Zuna or Chicken or any other companion. So 58% is kind of huge, right? And every time they will release new items that increase item level, the builds will only get stronger and stronger and stronger. So that's why I play with the Lion Guard Red Helm, even on my DPS build, on my Dreadnought, because it gives max item level basically. So I use the Bulwark of Brimstone so I can get some more hit points. Darks for combatant influence, which is really, really important on this build. The most combatant influence you can get, the better. Basically, hit points as modification. Fiend Forge Blessspirit, I use that because I'm lacking some defense on this build, so having that you can just basically make up for the defense, 4k defense extra. And I play with normally I play with Elven Battle, but I had Shadowclad there because I was doing PvP, but Elven Battle instead of Shadowclad, basically. And Lion Guard gloves because it gives max item level and it is pretty great. Like I don't use the chest, that like the ebonized chest that gives some power. I use that because item level wise it's better. I use a token Rage of Flame to do more damage myself, but you can use any other overloads. It's up to you. I play with the new set Celestial Blade because weapon damage and increase the combat damage. So if you have highest weapon damage is better. And I use Assassins in offense because it gives a lot of combat advantage, and on this build combat advantage is a pain to get. And a change from my oldest Zuna build, I play with Dread because Dread, what it does, it reduces the target's defense, and we know that armor pen on chicken is really strong, so if we can lower the defense by 3% it's really strong. And I use Heavy Slash as the modification because I'm a Dreadnought, so Heavy Slash is the way to go. And the other one I play at points and companion influence. You can also use 10% critical severity, but I prefer companion influence for now. And Assassin Demonics. And in the enchantments, I play with triple stats enchantment because they give 22 more item level than a single stat enchantment. It was 24. It gives like between 22 and 24. Yeah, 24 more item level than a radiant. So more item level wise, it's better. I play with those boots because they are pretty high in item level and darks in utility. I play with 4 300 item level artifacts, and you can use a Blast Scepter or you can use the Staff of Flower, but for Zariel or Tom, people will prefer you to have a Blast Scepter than a Staff of Flower, but you can use either of them because they give max item level. You can also use the Wyvern Knives, but most of the time it's the tanks that run that. Yeah. And also another alternative for your Dread is to play with the Bronzewood, but most of the time it's the tanks that play with the Bronzewood, so you are stuck with the Dread. But if the tank doesn't have Bronzewood, use it because it's better. Assassin, and I play with the engine set because the waste gives some charisma, which gives companion influence. But you can play with any set, but I prefer this one for this little charisma points. Play with the combat advantage as modification. Dark, as always. The ring of the fallen power. It's max item level and it balances my stats pretty well with crit strike. But I don't really like the crit avoidance, so and I cannot really play with the other ring. Where is it? The ring that gives 20k, yeah, this one. 20k combat advantage because on a fighter, reducing the daily power by 30%, it's pretty huge when we use Mowdown. So that's why I prefer to play with another ring, which is the Ring of the Herald, which give a bit combat advantage. But if you are like a wizard that doesn't really use a daily to do damage, but more to like empower your encounters, it's basically better to use that, or maybe a ranger, I believe. So it's your choice. Yeah, I play with the Silver Ring of the Herald. It's the new Milestone 1 ring, basically. You can have it like in Milestone 2 and 3, maybe 4, I don't know. It gives at-will power, so it's pretty strong. Whip of the Irony, Draconic and Dark. I mean, all the defense slots, it doesn't really matter what you have between Draconic and Demonics because they both give a lot of hit points. So having either of them is great. Excuse me. The shirt, max item level, crit strike, combat advantage. And if you want to increase just a tiny bit your item level, there's the 5% Everfrost damage reduction that gives 5 item level each, like for also your pants. But they cost a lot because you cannot really drop them anymore. So, but they give a little extra item level. And defense deflection for that, and demonics. So the stats, 137k power. It's not a lot of power, but we don't really care because the chicken will do most of the damage. Defense, I will be at like 89.3k for Zariel, so it's like a 0.7% difference, so it's not really bad. You can, like, I did a lot of Zariel with this build and I didn't see any problem. I mean, you have a shield as a fighter, so you can basically just block the damage most of the time. A lot of overcap crit strike, so if you can lower it, it can be nice. Critical avoidance don't really matter. Accuracy capped, combat advantage capped, or I mean, it's not capped yet, but as a fighter you have 10% extra combat advantage, so it goes up to 140k if you don't lose any stamina, but depending on what companion you use, you can increase it if you want. I will show you my companions. And only 100% and 20% crit severity. So it's just like you are basically the companion basically. And I play with Constitution and Charisma, of course. 8 points and Companion Influence. So let's see the powers now. So those are pretty much like the easiest way to play Dreadnought. You play with like Bull Charge, Anvil of Doom, and Commander Strike, and after that you just spam your Heavy Slash. Like you cannot really do the cancelling anymore, but you just keep your finger on the trigger and it deals a bunch of damage. And you use Mow Down and all of those feats. I mean, you can screenshot. Reeve for range, a bit more range. If in Zariel you have a certain mechanic that you cannot be close to the boss. The boons, you can screenshot the boons, but they are pretty straightforward. Nothing crazy there. It's really important to get this one for Companion Influence. The Stronghold, Critical Severity, 8 points. Revive Sickness because of Zariel and Tom, basically. PvP, we don't care. So now the chicken. So you can see my stats. You can see the health on the chicken. 1 million hit points. So if your chicken has around like 700k, it's normal. Because the health on the chicken increased with Companion Influence, but also with item level. So I'm 37k, so that's why the Companion health is really high. That's the only reason why it's really high. I don't know why like it gives health on the chicken based on your item level. I just don't know. But it's pretty nice to have a chicken with which has more hit points than most tanks in the game, right? And also, like I said in my Zuna video, the only 2 stats that matter, maybe 3 stats that matters on the chicken are the power, the armor pen, and accuracy. So but the most important between those is armor pen. After that I will say like power, and third is accuracy. So if you can increase your armor pen really high, it can be better. But be careful, because you will hit a cap pretty fast on armor pen. Like that much armor pen, you are basically overcapped for any other content than Tom, or I guess Tom, Infernal Citadel, and Zariel. But there you can use other items to increase your armor pen value. So I did some testing, and like for me, for like my class, I don't know which if it will be the same for you, but I need only 22k less stats than the normal caps. So for example, in Tom you need 80k stats normally. So for me on the chicken you need 22k less, so it's basically 58k. So you only need 58k armor pen to be capped in Tom. And since Zariel only has 10k more stats than Tom, then you will need 68k armor pen to be capped for those content. But you may ask, how do I increase my armor pen even more? That's simple. That's with armor break. Armor break, we did some testing with some people, my boy Captain Morgan, and we saw that armor break stacks. And we only tested with 4 people, and it stacked with 4 people, but we suppose that it also stacks with 10 people. So if you have 10 people that are using this thing, then that means the target will have 20k less defense, which means 20k more armor pen. So you will be way overcapped. So you need to see with your group if you go overcapped. So if you all use armor break, which basically is the best way to use the best thing to put when we play chicken, which everybody needs to play if everybody wants to play a chicken build in Zariel, then you can put some more accuracy, for example with the companion gear. You can, instead of putting 3 armor pen, you can basically put 1 12k accuracy gear and lower your armor pen a bit, so armor break is more beneficial. So yeah, that's a big thing. Armor break stacks, so you don't really need a lot of effort to reach the caps. So if you play solo, I always play with armor break because it's pretty strong for Chicken or Zuna. It's not as strong on AoE, but single target is always the best kind of thing because most of endgame content is always single target. So yeah, just find a balance between armor pen and accuracy. Personally, for everything except Zariel, I use a 12k accuracy instead, like 12k accuracy gear piece instead of a 12k armor pen. But for Zariel, I use that because the chicken meta is not like it's getting close to be really popular, but people don't really know it a lot yet. So that's why I'm making this video to put awareness to everybody to maybe invest a bit more on this build at the risk that they might nerf the chicken, but that's a detail. And I play with 6 Indomitable Runstones. And a lot of people asked if they stacked, and some people were saying like, no, they don't stack, or yeah, they will stack, but they stack. Just believe me. Like, they don't stack on their... Like, you don't see individual hits on the screen, but for example, if you do a 500k damage, you will see basically 400k Indomitable damage. That only means that it adds up all the 6 Indomitable in this 400k, so you just do 400k divided by 6 and it's basically the damage each Unlimitable do. But it stacks, believe me, it really stacks. And now for the companion. Another companion to reduce the defense on the target is Jagged Blade. But the thing is, it's pretty strong on other classes than the fighter, because on fighter we don't have our encounters really fast, but it can be really good on wizard, which has a daily that just basically spam your encounters, and also good on rangers that have a lot of encounters. But if all your party plays with armor break, you don't really need a Jagged Blade, and also Jagged Blade doesn't stack, but it refreshes. So if you play 2 Jagged Blade, it just means that they just refresh each other, but they don't stack. So if the first Jagged Blade is like has 5 seconds left on the timer, and someone else procs theirs, it just goes back to 10 seconds, basically. So with enough people playing with this, you can basically have a permanent 8k reduced defense. But you can play with any other companion just for yourself. There is no other companion that boosts your companion damage. You can maybe put some more combat advantage if you are lacking some with the Staldolf. Or you can play with the Raptor if you want. You can play with anything. And also in utility, some people likes to use this Celestial Lion. It boosts damage to you based on what your companion attacks. It's pretty strong, so I'm using it, but you can also play with hit points if you are liking some for Zariel, like with that Centaurian Warlock, or the 30k, 32k hit points. And all the defense ones, I basically use combat advantage just to cap a little bit more, and some hit points and defense to cap. So yeah, but the biggest thing is armor break that can stack. So yeah, now for the mounts. 3 Warlord's Inspiration. Like before, all 3 of them stacks together, but at a reduced percentage. Like the first one gives 20%, the second one gives 10%, and the last one gives 5%. And there's no more 2 insignia slot power, so we cannot use the little Warlord's Inspiration that give another 5%, so we are forced to use something else, which I use 2 Gladiator's Guile. And because it has 2 dominance, 2 thing that gives companion influence on Gladiator's Guile. So I just use basically dominance for companion influence for all the things that can, and the fortitudes for hit points and defense for all of the others that cannot. I guess I could switch that too. Whoops. But like if you don't meet the cap, you can also just use hit points. It's not really game changing. And the colors, I mean, hit point, action point, stamina gain, astral diamond, encounter powers, movement speed, but they don't really give a lot of stats. Equip power, I play the 15k combat advantage because I'm lacking combat advantage. And I play with the Toad, which is really strong for single target, but you can play with the Rex or the Swarm or any other things that you want. Yeah, so basically, like, you don't really see it there because stats on chicken don't really show, but it's really, really strong. If you want to see the results, you can always just watch the stream or maybe follow my Discord server. So I post screenshots from time to time of my performance in Zariel, but it's a build that really, really works well for any class. There's like a barb and a rogue that are trying it, and like they basically beat me in damage with this build because I'm a fighter. I'm a poor fighter, which is not really a great DPSer anyway. But for any other classes, it deals massive damage. Even on me, I beat like a lot of endgame clerics, arbiter, just with this build. So it's really, really high cost but high rewards. And also, alternatives you can play with is the Wyvern set. Wyvern set, I don't really use it because it's hard to use, but when you use a daily power, you create a rune that gives 5k power and 5k armor pen to everybody that stands in it, and 5% outgoing damage, but it only lasts 6 seconds. So it's pretty hard to use and time it with the chicken swarm. So I don't really use it. Or you can use the Staff of Flower, which give another 5k power. And my consumables, I use Watermelon Sorbet, Wildstorm Elixir, Superior Flask of Potency, and Invocation Blessing. So I think that covers everything. Just try this build by yourself, and this build is really high competitive. So it's not like a troll build in small dungeons like in Lost Moth or Temple of the Spider. It's a really actual competitive endgame build that can be used for anything. Like here I have the caps for basically Tom and Zariel, and my power is kind of low, but who cares? The chicken does most of the damage anyway. So I hope I don't forget anything. But just test this build for yourself. Be careful to not hit the cap on armor pen basically, and just balance with your accuracy on chicken. And I hope that one day they can maybe gives us more power on chicken, or maybe they will nerf it. Who knows? We don't know. But also another disclaimer for Tom: if you use multiple chickens, more than 2 chickens, more than one, like if 2 people has a chicken, the game crashes on the second phase, on the hands basically. So be careful to not have 2 chickens in your group or party, because it will crash the game. We already saw some crashes, and it crashes the game for everyone in the instance. So I hope they fix it one day. But in Zariel, we tested with 4 chickens yesterday, and it didn't crash. So in Zariel it doesn't crash, but in Tom it crashes, and the same thing with the Infernal Citadel on the final boss, it also crashes. And I heard someone say that it also crashes on the final boss of Lom. So just be careful. I don't know like all the content that makes the chicken makes the game crash, but just be careful about that. And I play with the bell, of course. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you liked this build, you can like the video, or if you really want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have a question, just write them in the comment section, and I will see it and answer at the best of my capacity. So don't forget, chicken for life, KFC, and see you to another build. Bye bye.